Welcome to the 30th episode of Tokenizing Everything, our weekly interview series with thought leaders in the blockchain industry. Today's guest is Professor Philipp Sandner, head of the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center. Before we begin, I have to mention that all opinions are solely personal and do not reflect the opinion of Amazing Blocks or any other involved parties. So it's a pleasure to have you here today, Philipp. How are you?
Yes, thanks very much. Nice that you have invited me. Actually, I have a little bit of a flu. So therefore, I really hope that, it's not everybody can hear my broken voice right now. And let's hope that the voice don't break in the next minutes.
Yeah, definitely. Then already, I wish you some speedy recovery, and let's see how it turns out. If you have any issues, just let me know. So, would you start by just briefly giving an intro of yourself and your background in the blockchain space?
Yes, of course. I started in 2013 inspecting Bitcoin and understanding it, and then a couple of years later, I started to basically, dig deeper, and so on. And then 4 or 5 years ago, we started to set up the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center in Frankfurt at the university. And this apparently works very well because we have since then grown to 10 people. People are working on blockchain basically all the time. And we have very interesting projects in the blockchain space concerning, of course, conferences we are doing, but also very interesting consulting companies and consulting projects. And in total, we are focusing on crypto assets, digital securities, and also the digital euro, how to bring the euro on blockchain system. And this works very well. I think we have also gotten like a member of the community, so to say, and therefore I'm quite happy with how this developed. And besides this, I'm also in the board of directors of the Blockchain Founders Group, which is a Liechtenstein-based venture capital investors. And I'm also in the board of directors of Avalok Ventures, which is a corporate venture capitalist from Switzerland. So there I try to really also understand how is the practical world operating, what startups are out there, what does work, what doesn't work, and so on. And I think therefore I have gotten a little bit of a good overview of what's happening in the European blockchain ecosystem.
Okay, thanks, Philip. Very, very insightful. I think it's definitely always good to have different perspectives, right? The practical and the academical, right? You can always have a certain neutral bird's eye view on the one hand from the academical work. On the other hand, you can really get your hands on the respective projects and work on them. So you mentioned that you already started inspecting Bitcoin back in 2013. So that's very exciting, right? It's quite early. So in regards to this, people always describe a certain wow moment, basically the respective time where they realized this is really going to change the future forever. This is really what an industry that I want to go all in with. What was this certain wow moment, this special moment for you where you realized, okay, I want to go all in on blockchain?
Well, in the beginning, back in 2013, was primarily some kind of hobby, something I just digged into a little bit, reading here and there. But then 4 or 5 years ago, I felt, I need to invest 24/7 if somehow possible into this topic to investigate all kinds of aspects and really dig deeper. And this is then the job basically which was granted to me by the university, allowing me to inspect this entire topic day by day. So what was it? I think this was back in maybe 2015. At that point of time, Bitcoin was on the rise here and there, but also there was some kind of stagnation visible. But you saw the ecosystem emerging and you saw very early new tokens coming up. Ethereum was on the rise at that point of time. At least, they have been announced and so on. That was very fascinating. And at that point of time, I felt, this technology is groundbreaking. And then I decided, how can I structure my job? How can I change my job at the university to be able to work full time with blockchain technology?
Okay, very interesting. I think it was definitely the right decision to go in on this space. So before this, you actually focus on another very exciting space. You were mainly dealing with IP, right? So could you maybe share some insights on this? And as a follow-up, how do you see IP and blockchain relate in the future, maybe?
Yeah, that's interesting. So IP, the way I dealt with IP was basically patents and trademarks, and I used them to create statistics for my PhD dissertation and my research. So I really understood patents and trademarks, and therefore, what can we say about this? It's basically the idea to somehow protect intangible assets somehow. I think it's pretty clear with trademark, you can protect a name or a logo such that nobody else can use it. And with this, a trademark right is a right to exclude others from use. And the same is true, for example, with patents. So in case I'm holding a patent on a specific invention, then I can exclude any other person from using this invention, this patent. But it's very important to talk also about in which industry we are talking about. So in case we are in biotechnology, chemistry, and pharmaceuticals, then this works very well because we have one drug, take the vaccine for Corona. We have one product, we have one chemical substance. You can protect this with one patent. So it's a one-to-one combination. So one patent is really protecting this product. You see this very nicely with the vaccine patents for Corona. But then you have other industries, especially IT industry and electronic industries, where you have, for example, this cell phone here. And inside this cell phone, you don't even know how many patents have been put into there. You have the display, you have the light, you have the camera, you have the keyboard, whatever out there. So estimations vary whether in this iPhone here there are 15,000 patents or 50,000 patents. So that's unclear, but it's a hell lot. And therefore, the way you need to understand patents is the following. It does make sense to have patents because it signals quality. The patent in the field of biotechnology and chemistry also might have some value because there might be a substance being protected. But the value of a patent in the IT area is basically close to zero. So should as a startup, should I invest in patents? Should I get patents and inventions protected, as a startup in the IT area, in the blockchain area? Well, yes, because you can really present it to investors, and investors typically like patents, right? But will the patent really protect something valuable? No, not at all. So therefore, that's interesting, I think, for blockchain startups. It does make sense to file for a patent, but the costs for doing so should be kept at a minimum. So it just makes sense to file exactly one patent, not 5, not 10, not 20, because this just costs a hell lot of money, and the value for this is basically limited because, as I said, with one single patent, you might protect 1 out of 15,000 patents here in this iPhone. So therefore, I hope this has gotten clear when and under which circumstances it does make sense to file for a patent. But startup founders in the blockchain space, they should not think that with a granted patent, they have something valuable. They do not.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's actually quite a relevant topic right now because for those who don't know, on the Curve DAO, actually a lawyer filed for a proposal whether the community should file the codes, the smart contract codes of the Curve DAO, a DeFi protocol, as a patent because other protocols started to copy it. I mean, we all know what happened with Uniswaps and the Sushi Swap fork and everything around it. Do you think that these type of open source protocols, which are more of a decentralized community, have any sort of way in the future to file for a patent? Because, I mean, typically there shouldn't be any entity that files for this patent. So who does it? Would it be maybe an entity that issues the tokens? Would it be a participant, a member? What is your take on how this will play out in the future?
That's a good point. At the end of the day, whether you have a patent on an automated market maker or whatever, honestly, it doesn't matter at all. I could now take exactly this invention and create a product out of this, and nobody could sue me. And why is this? Because it's very difficult to prove that I have infringed on this patent. And by definition, patents are typically only awarded for roughly tangible things, right? And what we are talking about are business methods, computer code, and this is by definition not something which can be protected. So in case somebody has a patent on this, so what happens there? I can challenge the patent, and very often I would pass the judges arguing that this patent should never have been granted, right? So I hope this gets clear. So in case somebody is having a patent on some kind of DeFi mechanism, the patent is there, and maybe I'm a little bit shocked such that I might not take the same code and do something else with it. But with understanding how patents work, at the end of the day, I could simply take exactly the same innovation, and in case somebody would sue me at court, then I would basically sue the patent owner back and tell him this patent should never have been granted. And you can easily argue this because in the IT area with software code and business methods, very often you can challenge patents and you can argue they should never have been granted. It might sound a little bit strange for people listening now, but very often patents are granted for the sake of being granted. But at the end of the day, a patent is just getting really valuable in case it is contested, in case people are challenging the patent, and in case the patent is then still available, right? So the strongest patent out there is granted and somebody has challenged it, that it should have not existed, but the patent owner still has won, such that even after this challenge, that patent is still existing. I hope you get this point. It's not easy to understand. If we should draw it, graphically, then it's more easily to understand. So therefore, you can typically challenge patents in the software area, and typically you will win. And therefore, as a result, software developers can easily use other people's patents. That's my personal opinion, because suing them is quite difficult, costs a hell lot of money, and the patents in the IT world are very often, not always, but very often fully worthless.
Yeah, definitely. And also, as you mentioned, especially for startups, it can be quite challenging to register due to the time, the cost that is involved there, right? I've also written an article about it. So everyone that wants to find out more, feel free to read it. It can be found on my LinkedIn or to reach out to you directly, I assume. So one last question about the patent topic. Do you believe that applying blockchain technology from the backend side of things to the patent industry could kind of enhance the entire lifecycle management in regards to leveraging the transparency features, the timestamp of a blockchain, and generally also make the entire process more efficient and standardized potentially?
Well, theoretically, yes, definitely. But patents are something which are enshrined in the law of a country, and to make them tokenized assets, for example, you first would have to change the law's country. It's the same like real estate. Ideally we would like to tokenize real estate, but it's not easily possible to do this directly because real estate is somehow rooted in the real estate register of a country. That's the same with patents in the patent register. So yes, there is something in the future, but right now you cannot really exploit it. But I would like to twist the discussion to something else, because if we talk about IP, then IP is not just trademarks and patents. IP is also copyrights. And copyrights, that's basically images, music, videos, photos. And I think you know where I'm now going. That's the world of NFTs, right? At the core, a large fraction of all non-fungible tokens are somehow rooted in intellectual property, which is morphed into some kind of IT object, which is the NFT. But originally, you do have some kind of property right, some kind of copyright on an image, on a music piece, on a video, and so on. And the question now, and this is unanswered, the question now is, how are NFTs related to copyright, right? Where is exactly the right? Who is owning it? Because the copyright is rooted in national law, and the NFT is something where you're transferring something into it in the digital sphere, so to say. Yeah, so this needs to be sorted out. But for everybody excited about NFTs, it's interesting to observe that very often you're trying to package some kind of IP into this NFT, and this IP very often is protected through copyrights at the outset.
Yeah, definitely, especially also in the music industry. At Amazing Lux, we've received some interest as well in regards to the royalties of music, right? Because one single song usually has up to at least 9 different forms of IP, right? So hence, I also had Peter Raffleson on the show a couple of weeks ago who talked about this. So it's very interesting that you mentioned NFTs, and I think it could be definitely a great solution to this entire problem, especially if regulators kind of pick up steam in regards to regulating them and having the proper guidelines in place. So let's talk a bit quickly about the Frankfurt School Blockchain Center, where you're currently the head of. So why do you, as a starting question, why do you personally, and I know this from also your posts, consider it so crucial to educate people in regards to blockchain?
It's crucial is maybe the wrong word, but I think there are huge chances there when people are investing time into blockchain, because it creates amazing career possibilities for young people, right? So startups are being built, departments in companies are being founded. You can do a career as an influencer, as a lawyer, everywhere, because very often elderly people in senior decision-making positions, they don't have the time to investigate blockchain technology in depth. And that's the chance for young people, being in the studies and being so young that there is more time for studying, for investigating topics. So young people should have a higher possibility to get into this blockchain technology with a couple of hundreds of hours of effort. And this should then bring them to a status where they could follow a very decent career. So therefore, we don't have to educate young people in this space, right? We don't have to do anything, but the chances are there for young people to do an amazing career. And the same is true for the society and for the companies. They demand people to be employed. And right now I'm getting maybe 3-4 job offers per week where somebody would like to employ blockchain people, but they are just not there yet because nobody has educated them 1 year ago. Well, we at the Frankfurt School, we did educate them, at least in Frankfurt, at least the students in our university building, right? But what I'm missing at this point of time is like a broad effort to educate young people in, say, all European universities, if they are somehow related to business and finance and so on. Because it's very clear that the finance in the future will be run by blockchain technology. That's the euro on blockchain, that's the dollar, that's securities, that's tokens, that's all kinds of stuff. And therefore, finance without blockchain is unimaginable, right? And if you take this and if you understand this, then as a consequence, we have to educate people to some degree such that they are equipped with the knowledge they are needing in the future. And therefore, I'm really pushing this. I'm advising, I think, 25 people with their bachelor and master thesis every year to basically try to give my best to give them the knowledge they need for a subsequent career in blockchain. Yeah. And this works apparently very well. People who have been educated in blockchain, people who have written their thesis with me, and if they want to have a job in blockchain, then very easily they get a job, and very easily after 1 year and so on, they start really making a decent career. Yeah, it really does work, but you have to invest some time in the beginning.
Definitely. I mean, education is really the key of everything, right? So in regards to, let's assume I'm a newbie in this space, and I know from experience right at the beginning, it can be quite overwhelming to enter this space. On the one hand, people within the blockchain sector are quite open to discussing, so it's very easy to get access to, the big dogs, so to say, in the industry. But on the other hand, it still is, when you enter the space and just read, there's thousands of different information out there. Sometimes they're differing from each other, so it can be quite challenging. And hence, learning by doing approach is really the right thing, right, to enter this space. So what would you suggest a young person that enters this space in regards to some steps to really get into this field of blockchain?
Yeah, that's a good point. So I think reading is important, and at some point of time, you have to invest time also in operative hands-on projects. There are tons of educations possibilities out there, YouTube videos, podcasts, and so on. So I think the primary goal needs to be investing, say, 400 or 500 hours in blockchain. And then at some point of time, it does make sense to get your hands dirty. That means starting to program a smart contract, starting to write an article, start to join some kind of nonprofit association, invest some time there to get to know the people and what they are doing. There is the International Token Standardization Association, ITSA. Then there is the Digital Euro Association, DEA, and so on. There are so much possibilities. Young people just have to do it and just have to approach these organizations and offer that they might be willing to help for free or for a decent, a small amount of money or whatever. There are so many possibilities, but people just have to do it. And therefore, actually, there is no way at this point of time to guide young people through this jungle of knowledge out there. People somehow have to invest time, and they have to somehow pass this confusing jungle about various information and contradicting things and so on. But so many people have done it, and therefore, to be honest, everybody can do it. You just have to invest a couple of hundreds hours, and then it's possible. And saying that there is confusing content and contradicting people and so on, yeah, that's how it is. That's the world. But this should not be a reason to not do it. Rather, it's a hurdle where you can jump over, and other people might be so confused that they will not jump over, and therefore it's also a protection mechanism for those people inside this universe. But honestly, it's all open source. It's all there. You can download all kinds of software packages. It's all for free. You don't need to purchase a software license and nothing. It's all out there. And therefore, sometimes I wonder why people are not investigating more time to understand this absolutely fascinating technology. You know, we have Bitcoin, crypto assets, then the world of tokens, decentralized finance, and so on. And whatever you have a look at, you know, all curves are going up. All curves are going up. It can be the number of wallets in the Bitcoin network. It can be the number of smart contracts on Ethereum, and so on and so forth. But that's the crypto world. This needs to be emphasized. The industrial world of blockchain, you know, like companies like Daimler, Bosch, and Siemens, they also are trying to do blockchain since a couple of years, but the result is basically very, very moderate. Not too much has come out of these companies now after observing them for a couple of years. So the true dynamic is happening in the crypto, DeFi, Bitcoin, and token space.
Yeah, definitely. And what I always find quite interesting is if you compare the prices, right, of the crypto assets, which are quite volatile, with just the number of wallets, then you can really see that the adoption is steadily and actually gradually growing, whereas the prices may, you know, drop 50%, increase 50%. It doesn't matter in regards to the adoption. The adoption train is just rolling on and continuing. So it's definitely exciting to see what's going on there. You also mentioned the ITSA. Maybe let's just briefly talk about the need for standardization within the industry, right? There's generally the industry, especially when we look at the token economy, can be quite fragmented. On the one hand, obviously from a technology standpoint, we have different chains that are, at least as of now, not interoperable with each other. We have different regulations, right? We have obviously the Liechtenstein Token Act, for instance, or new regulations in Switzerland, which are quite progressive. Then we have other more restrictive regulations in jurisdictions like the US, for instance, which is though also opening up a bit. Why do you think that standardization is so crucial? And what is your take on where the path will go in the future?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I think we should soon have to stop because my voice is getting worse and worse. I think the standardization is important because it allows us to scale, right? You need to have standardized interfaces, standardized smart contracts, and so on, because then they can be used in an interoperable way, and you can then use them basically together with others. And therefore, you have to have this standardization because it allows you to have a scalable business. And you see this very nicely with DeFi. With DeFi, you have partly highly standardized smart contracts and interfaces. Then you can plug them to each other, and then the entire overall system is growing. You see this very nicely with DeFi.
Yeah, definitely. Then I'll just ask two last questions, then I'll let you go to your, you have to rest, I assume. Then just quickly, what to you, as the topic is obviously tokenizing everything, what to you is the most feasible and also most favorite use case for you in regards to tokenization?
Well, at this point of time, I think it's in Liechtenstein, I really like that you can tokenize special purpose vehicles. That's basically small legal entities. And here it really does make sense to package things into these legal entities such that these things can be tokenized. For example, real estate. This works very perfectly and you can do it. And I think it's also the future. We also have seen that once you would like to get a securities out of them, then it gets very, very complex. But therefore, I think what can be tokenized, I think it does make very much sense to use the Liechtenstein Token Act for tokenization of SPVs. That's small legal entities. This works very well. But besides this, I think at this point of time, we still have to look at the promises of tokenization because most of the promises have not been held yet.
Yeah, definitely. And I think in Liechtenstein, obviously from experience, I know it's a very sophisticated legal framework in regards to leveraging it and in regards to also what you can tokenize. And definitely the real estate topic is is quite an interesting one, right? We see a lot of increasing demand on that regard from the amazing block side as well, just from the industry, because the real estate market as a whole is just so large. I assume it's also, you know, may have the biggest impact, or one of the biggest impacts in regards to tokenization. So, you know, taking your health into consideration, I would just ask you one last question that I always ask my guests, and it's always interesting to get the different perspectives. Where do you personally, you know, as also the topic is the future of blockchain, see blockchain in, say, 10 years from now?
Oh yes, that's interesting. I think by then you have all kinds of systems in place, and I think primarily it will be Bitcoin and Ethereum the same it is now. Why? Ethereum might not be perfect, but you have a huge mass of people who know how to program it and how to code it. And therefore, I think this mass of developers doesn't go away easily. You have universities educating in Ethereum and not in Cosmos or Polkadot and so on. So education is primarily being done in Ethereum. Bitcoin is, you see this with El Salvador, it's also on the rise. So therefore, I think we will have some changes here and there, but Bitcoin and Ethereum will still be there. And besides this, I think decentralized finance has become the world's capital market for loans, borrowing, trading, and so on. Maybe not everywhere, right? Maybe not in some legacy domains, but in specific domains and also in new domains, for example, financially included people, I think we will see like a continued huge growth of DeFi.
Yeah, definitely. And as long as people are educated and the tools become more intuitive to use, then I think we definitely have a bright future ahead of us. So thanks, Philipp, for the great interview, and also thanks for taking the time despite you being a bit sick. So I really appreciate it, and it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you.
Thanks much.
Yeah, so and to our listeners, as always, it was a pleasure to have you on the show, whether you listened live on the recording, on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. If you have any questions in regards to tokenization, you can always reach out to myself or the team of Amazing Blocks. And if you have any questions in regards to blockchain in general, I'm sure you can reach out to Philipp and his team at the Frankfurt Blockchain Center. Have a great day, guys, and see you next week.